Thank you for joining Wars of the Roses. As we continue with Part 19, Influence of the Kabalah on Jewry, Book 3, Source and Authority of the Kabalah, from the Doctrine and Literature of the Kabalah by Arthur Edward Waite. 7. Influence of the Kabalah on Jewry. There is perhaps no one at the present day, certainly no Christian or occult student of the subject, who is in a position to say exactly what kind of profit accrued to the mind of Jewry from the promulgation, let us say, of the Zohar. From one point of view, such an inquiry may be held to strike at the root of all occult science and philosophy, and for the rest, it is one of those subjects which do not readily occur to the occultist. I remember a conversation which I once had with a priest of the Anglican Church, who had passed through every school of initiation with which I am acquainted, and through others which are outside my knowledge. He assured me that the most profound student of occultism among all students whom he had met in his long experience was a Jew, I think, of Poland. Let us make the most of this statement, since we know that there are initiations and that the Jew is in most of them concerned as he is in all interests, in evidence as he is in all lands, and with due consideration to the late Sir Richard Burton and his posthumous treatise, much better described by the famous passage in Coningsby than by a somewhat vexatious criticism pivoted on a monstrous charge. But it is quite certain that the edita of the secret societies, though they are not closed to the Jew, are not in any sense possessed by the Jew. While as regards all such external signs of activity as are manifested by current literature of occultism, any bibliography will show us how little he has done in this respect. What is much more important, however, is that, so far as it is possible to ascertain, the Kabbalah has exercised only a very subsidiary influence upon the children of the exile. We can point to certain enthusiasms for which it is partially responsible, and they are those precisely which did their best to wreck Jewry, and of which Jewry is now ashamed. The history of Abraham Abulafia of Sabbatai Zevi and the founder of the Chassidim are typical cases in point which warrant us in saying that the Kabbalah gave spurious messiahs to Israel. It was perhaps the last instance of its activity before it ceased to exercise any powerful influence, and with this also it began, if we care to believe that Rabbi Akiba was the author of the Book of Formation, in which case one of the supreme sources of Kabalism is connected with the bogus, or at least the frenzied mission of Bar Kokhba. When that false messiah had been finally silenced by the sword, his disciple, or perhaps his instigator, and the inspirer also of R. Simeon ben Yochai, the head and crown of Kabalism, was barbarously martyred for his share in the unhappy rebellion. If a literature may be judged by its influence, that of the Kabbalah has been small. It has encouraged false enthusiasm and has been the warrant for direct imposture. So far as its operation was intellectual, there is very good ground for thinking that its field was the Christian rather than the Jewish mind. And having established one useful point, there is an opportunity here of making another. Kabbalistic influence on Christendom has been of two kinds, but it has been much more of one kind than another. It has been an influence exercised by an occult claim upon the students and the acceptors of occult claims. But it has been much more the influence of possible missionary material on the missionary enterprise of the Christian Church. To begin at a late date, what gave the Kabbalah of the Zohar to the Latin reading scholars of Europe, the magnum opus of Rosenroth? What impelled Rosenroth? The splendid spectrum of the conversion of Jewry en masse. And now if we sweep backward to the very beginning of the Christian interest in Kabalism, almost coincident in fact with the appearance of the Zohar, and suppose that Raymond Lully was really, as it has been said that he was, the first Christian student of the Kabbalah, what was the lifelong labor of that amazing seneschal of Majorca? And for what did he renounce the world? To wrest, as it has been said, from reluctant nature the elusive mastery of nature, the great palingenesis of alchemy? The Hermetic treatises falsely ascribed to him may say yes, but we know that they are the products of the school of forgery which produced the spurious Geber, and that this was by no means the ambition of Raymond Lully. But was it the attainment of the religion behind all religions? Nothing of the sort. That is modern fantasy. The work of Raymond Lully was apostolical and missionary, and it closed with martyrdom at Bugia, in a feverish attempt to evangelize Mahund. What prompted the fiery energy of Picus de Mirandola that he filled the papal court with the rumor and the wonder of the Jewish tradition? The fact that he also regarded it as a certain mystic way by which the princes of the exile might be brought to the gates of the eternal city, and the ghetto might be transformed into a baptistry. Suppose, lastly, that Nicholas Flamel was really initiated by the Book of Abraham the Jew, so that Kabalism connects integrally with alchemy. What prompted the unostentatious scrivener of old Paris to make precious metals by occult arts, when his wants were few and his trade sufficient for a modest man? Why he also had the missionary spirit witness his bequests, real or fabulous, for the conversion of the heathen. The inference is that the Kabbalah was imported out of Jewry to prove that Jewry might be Christianized if it were handled wisely according to the lights given in the holy synods. Now, I do not need to say that there are very few occultists who would take any interest in the Kabbalah regarded from this point of view. They are not, as a class, inspired by missionary zeal for any form of official religion, and their literature as it stands does not manifest more than sufficient respect for the great orthodoxies of Christendom. On the other hand, it is only in virtue of some immense misapprehension that the esoteric tradition of the Jews can be supposed to offer them the religion behind all religions. What it does offer them falls almost infinitely short. At its highest, a bizarre but truly strenuous attempt to unriddle the universe, the most unaided of all metaphysics, the Systema Mundi excogitated in a darkened synagogue with the praying shawl drawn over the eyes. What darkness to be felt in the void! What strange lights flashing in the darkness! In such a state, Spanish Jew or Spanish mystic of the Latin Church, Moses de Leon, if you will, or St. John of the Cross, exile of Babylon or recluse of the Thebaid, must enjoy a certain communication of the infinite. But to say more than this is frenzy, and at its lowest, that is to say, on that side upon which it makes contact no longer with the infinite, but with the occult, as it is understood by occultism, finite of all things finite, what somber trifling unredeemed by the saving sense of triviality, the physiognomy of the section Yithro, the astrology of the processes of Gaffarel, the star messages of the Hebrew planisphere, the paper tubes of Eliphas Levi, or again Notaricon metathesis, gematria, the arcana of the extended name, the virtues of Agla and Ararita for conjuring heaven and earth. It is here that occultism illustrates how it receives only what it can give and how it comes to pass that the interest of the occultist in the Kabbalah is less inspired by the occult theorems of the Zohar than by the magic garters of the Key of Solomon. Hence, even writers like Papus in France, who have exceptional claims on our consideration, find it necessary to include in their scheme of Kabbalism the sorry literature of the grimoires. And they and he have nothing to tell us of the Zohar. But we do not find the grimoires in Picus de Mirandola or in Raymond Lully. We do not find much trace of magic in the Kabbalah Denudata. The lexicon of Rosenroth does not include the occult wonders of Agla, nor does it tell us after what manner the extended name is compounded by a childcraft of acrostics out of 3 verses in Exodus. We do find all these in Agrippa, who wrote as a young man of things that he had heard and read, making a very dignified retractation of it all in his book of great excellence upon vanity. There remains, of course, the mystic side of Kabalism, the return of the soul to God, and that path of ecstasy already mentioned, by which it was conceived that the soul might effect such reunion even in this life. But it is precisely this mystic side of which we see no effect in Jewry, and it is also this side which is neglected by modern occultism. For example, the present work is the first published in England which has any reference to the highest principle of the human soul in Kabalism and the instrument of unification with the divine. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe and comment, and if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Roses. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.